Kristin.
Jeff.
Well, the back to school series continues. You are on week 2. How's it going?
It's going. It feels like a week 2, beginning of the year assessment. So it's a lot of diagnostic testing, a lot of just rote procedures. Gotta love it. Necessary evil.
I hear you. You got to lay the foundation, right? You got to lay down the infrastructure before you really get at it and start grinding, which is really what you wrote about this week, right?
It
You
is. It
getting the
is.
classroom ready and putting all of that into perspective and tying it into Walt and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So
Yeah.
tell that story.
Yeah. So I love that. Well, let's start by saying this was a week that I didn't necessarily love because as prepared as I was, and I'm one of the teachers that I do go in on some weekends. I do stay late sometimes, not nearly as much as I used to, but I also am in my classroom during my summer break because I like to feel like I can show up on day one with it, everything lined up and ready to go. And wouldn't you know, the world doesn't always work that way. And so we were supposed to have our new curriculum for the school year. And we were supposed to have our teacher's edition, which is, of course, a teacher facing manual that says, here's all your standards, here's things to consider, here's how to do it well. I didn't get it. I didn't get it for day 1, didn't have it by day 2. And then I was informed that we weren't going to have these materials until October,
Ooh,
which for our non-teachers, this is how my brain works. From August to October, that's quarter 1. So that's 25% of our school year was going to be without materials.
how do
And it
you
was
how do you get through life without a manual?
right. I know. I needed it. Even though I'm confident in myself as a teacher, I feel a lot better with, a script. I want
Yeah,
to be told what to do, and it minimizes the level or the risk of failure, and it's a safety net for me. I
I
like
get
it.
it. So
Yeah.
funny story real quick.
Yeah.
I had a coworker about 10 years ago come in one morning. She was really upset because her
Mm-hmm.
car had been broken into at her apartment complex during the night,
Mm,
which, I mean, that's very upsetting, right? You feel
sure.
violated anytime something like that happens. And my first question was, well, what did they take? And her response in a blurry of tears was, everything. They took everything. And I'm like, okay, um, well, like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Like, like,
Like the
you know,
seats out of the vehicle, they took the seats, they took the steering wheel. Like,
yeah, is this thing being stripped down in, a third world country? Like, help me
sure.
define everything. What do you mean by that? Turns out they broke into her glove box and she didn't really have anything, but they did take the manual. And so she's like, they took the manual. They took everything. They took the manual. So when you were like, hey, how am I supposed to proceed? 25% of the year is going to be gone before I get my manual. It's like they took everything, Kristin.
They did. They literally did. And it was so frustrating. And so, like Walt did in making Snow White, at the time, they didn't have the technology to do the shots and to capture what they wanted properly. We know that Walt was a perfectionist and he had an idea in his head of what he wanted this to look like. And it was a big gamble. This was the first ever full feature length animated film. And so it had to be perfect. Well, when they didn't have the equipment to do it to his standard, he said, well, we got to build it. And that's where we have the multi-plane camera step in.
That's
And I
right.
did my own version of multi-plane building um, over Sunday, actually. I went in and spent almost 4 hours and I built curriculum and I made sure everybody had copies and, scaffolded notes for our students that have, diverse needs. And I was like, all right, here it is. Here's the multi-plane camera. And
Necessity is the mother of invention.
there it is. And so the next day, my students were like, I don't know if they were impressed or kind of like, oh my God, like she's serious. We're not going to get out of this for a few months. Like we're still moving forward with or without the books because she made them. And then wouldn't you know, after I distributed all of the packets. And let me tell you what, 120 packets of hole punching and stapling and making sure people have it in the right order, that in itself was a
Mhm.
feat. I
Yeah.
came in the next day and there was this loud thud going outside my door. And I'm looking out, I see my administrator. I'm like, what is she doing? It sounded like she was throwing a student down to the ground. She wasn't. I opened the door. I'm like, is everything okay out here? And wouldn't you know, they're dropping all of the cases of our curriculum at the door.
Of course. Well, in your defense, if you had not done a thing, you
Uh-huh.
might have gone the entire school year without curriculum. But because
Absolutely.
you jumped on it, bam, next day, there it is, right? Isn't that sort of the way it works?
It is. It is. So it was a pleasant surprise. Was I irritated? Yeah. And it was a cool lesson for my students because I said, listen, I could sit here and be so upset that they didn't have the tracking information correct, that I wasted, 4 hours on a Sunday, when I had better things to be doing with my time. I said, or I can force my perspective on this and say, you know what? This is a reminder that sometimes amazing gifts and
Mhm.
blessings come out of complete nowhere, and this was a really cool way for my students to see firsthand, week one, what their teacher is willing to do for them to make sure they can be successful. So I call that a win, and it changed the whole
Absolutely.
mood. Yeah,
Absolutely. And remember, Walt said happiness is a choice. It's all a matter of what?
perspective.
Exactly.
Yep, yep. And that couldn't be a more relevant lesson this week. So speaking
Love it.
of you were not actually at D23, but the love of your life was, which kind of helped form a little bit of what you wrote about this week. And I love how you so poetically tied it into a lesson from when you were an educator um, with one of your students. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, so Lindsay crushed her first D23. She got to spend it with the likes of Bob Weiss and Joe Rody,
No
and,
big deal.
yeah, and she had an absolutely wonderful weekend, and, a lot of Disney fans, me included, were underwhelmed by
Yeah.
the show on Saturday night and, the lack of, big announcements. And it was interesting on Sunday, to see, sort of the backlash on social media, and
Mm,
I was tempted to jump in on that because again,
same.
it's not even that I was disappointed as much as I was so looking forward to, watching everything. Like, this is like the Super Bowl for theme park fans, and,
Absolutely.
I didn't think the show was very good. Some people loved it, and that's fine. And then again, the announcements were underwhelming. But I gave it a couple of days, right? And some perspective, there's that word again.
Hmm.
And I came to realize that, well, first of all, they set the bar so high 2 years ago, which is the first time they had ever done the park panel from the Honda Center.
Mm.
And it was announcement after announcement after announcement after announcement after announcement. It's like, whoa.
Right.
And
Like
they were
home run, home
never
run. Yeah.
yeah, they were never going to meet the bar that they set 2 years ago, let alone exceed it, right?
Sure.
And
Sure.
so, I think it would have been better if Disney had taken the approach of, "Hey, 2 years ago, we stood on this stage and we blew everyone away with,
Uh-huh.
a ton of amazing and super exciting announcements. And tonight, we're primarily going to spend our time together updating you on where we are with all of that and stay until the end because we've got a few surprises up our sleeves." That would have been amazing. They didn't do that. And I understand why they didn't. So in putting it into perspective, I came to understand, all right, well, it's not like they gave us nothing. And it's not like, they aren't doing a ton of stuff because they are,
Sure.
and things like fixing the Yeti in Animal Kingdom or bringing Dreamfinder back to what I think is a horrible attraction at Epcot, which is Journey into
Mm.
Imagination, are giving us finally a new Tomorrowland, whatever it is that they mean by that, because there was zero detail.
I
Um,
know. I was waiting for them to at least crack the door open a little bit to let us see behind the curtain, but we got nothing. Maybe it's because they don't know.
I mean, they set the bar so low on that, they could put a new popcorn cart in Tomorrowland and call it done. Because there was, like, zero detail, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But current Disney leadership inherited the Broken Yeti. Current Disney leadership inherited the Journey into Imagination Pavilion. Current Disney leadership inherited a Tomorrowland that has been yesteryear land for a decade or two at this point. And
Sleepy land.
so as I thought about it and reflected on it and gave it some perspective, I remembered and was able to tie it into a story that I've been sitting on for 20 years, which is a student in one of my history classes scoring a 6. Now, I don't mean a 6 out of 10. I mean a 6 out of 100. Now, you gotta try. You gotta be going for a 6 to get a 6 in one of my classes. And that's
Oh,
why I remember it so well, right? It's not like
yeah.
everybody got a 6 on their first. No, no, no. Like this is like, whoa, like wow. And he wasn't there when I passed out the second exam, but showed up in my office the next day and asked if he could have it. And of course the answer was yes.
Mm,
And as I wrote about, I'm used to giving exams back somewhat anonymously. In a classroom, with 40, 50, 60 students, here's Kristen, here's Lindsay, here's Jeff, whatever. But
mhm.
now it's just, one-on-one. It's just him and me. And I
Yeah.
hand him this paper, which has all of 18 points on it,
It went
and
up.
he's devastated. He's crestfallen. He's so disappointed.
Yeah.
And he looks at it and he says to me, "Oh, Dr. Barnes, I thought I did better." And of course, me being me was, "You did." Score. And then
Right?
I kind of tripled down on it, if you will, and said, "You were most improved." And it did not help.
It didn't help. Probably made it
No,
worse.
not
I
at
feel
all.
so bad for this kid. Oh,
Yeah. Um, and I don't remember what he got on the 3rd exam. I don't remember if he passed the course. I mean, I think it was at that point probably statistically impossible for him to be
sure.
able to pass, quite frankly. I
Which course
and
was
like I
it?
said, I've been sitting on that story for, 20 years now, and I remembered it after everything on Saturday
Yeah.
because Disney is listening. Disney
Right.
is working to improve what hasn't been working. And, did they crush it on Saturday night? No. Um, did they ace every announcement? Not even close.
Mm.
But things like fixing the Yeti and bringing back Dreamfinder are improvements, and, I want to give them kudos and credit for that. And as I ended the article, um, based on the score that I would give the current Tomorrowland, which I would grade on a curve because it is home to my all-time favorite attraction, which is Disneyland's Space Mountain. But
Right.
regardless, almost anything that they could do to the current version of Tomorrowland would result in that land getting the grade of quote unquote most improved. 'Cause, rega would I love for them to bring the People Mover back? Of course.
For sure.
What is more egregious to me is the fact that they've left the track sitting there abandoned for all these years.
I guess to me, it's so funny because I didn't even know that was there until you pointed it out to me on our last trip
And now you
together.
can't unsee it.
I can't unsee it, and it's so frustrating. And then when we had the privilege to visit the, the Disney Vacation Club lounge, and I just could not help myself but look around at all of the unused, let's call it wasted space, and everywhere you look is opportunity, which I know
Mhm.
is kind of the definition of Tomorrowland, but it's like not being used in the way I think we meant it. Like, look at all this unused potential.
Well, everybody talks about, "Ooh, what would happen if they got rid of Autopia? Ooh, what would happen if they got rid of the submarines?" And those are
Guilty.
valid questions, but what about the building where the Carousel of Progress used to be?
Right.
What about the Magic Eye Theater? Like, those are massive spaces, massive buildings. And so,
Yep.
again, so much opportunity, so much potential, and so much opportunity and potential in a park that has been landlocked for forever. Like, this isn't Walt Disney World where they can just do a villain's land, you know, beyond or behind Magic Kingdom, right? It
Right,
just
and make it better. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. We're kinda stuck with
and
what
yet
we've got.
they're
Thanks for that burn.
yeah, they're sitting on space that, I
No
don't
pun
even know that
intended.
underutilized is the right term. Um, yeah, it's just
Because I
let's
don't
go.
even think it's being utilized.
Correct.
A
Yeah,
lot of
it
it. Yeah.
can't be underutilized if it's not being utilized at all.
Yeah. Like, mm, I know. There's so much. So, well, I'm gonna choose to force my perspective and look at it. Tomorrowland is almost limitless opportunity and possibility. Like you said, they are listening, and I think that's the biggest takeaway is because there's so much noise out there about how, they're just focused on money, which of course, I mean, they're a for-profit company. Yeah, that's kind of their job to stay afloat, right, financially. But I do think that this is evidence that they are listening to the fans. They are listening to what we're saying and at least taking it into account. You can either be frustrated that it took 20 years to fix the Yeti, or you can celebrate the fact that they're actually going to be bringing it back. We're in control of how we react to it. So,
Absolutely. And, I think bringing it down to a personal level, you can't fix everything at once. You can't change everything at once. You and I were talking about, the challenges that you're facing on a daily basis as you're back into the daily throes of being in,
yeah,
the classroom. And, you were crushing it in terms of, like, writing and reaching out and all of your other goals during the summer. And, doesn't mean that you've gotta be up at 4 a.m., but maybe if you get up 10 minutes earlier tomorrow than you
mhm,
did today, that's enough to be, quote, unquote, "most improved." And if
exactly.
we improve at that level, however small, on a regular basis, I think we're all gonna be very happy with the results at the end of the day and end of the year.
Absolutely, because that's where you find success. It's moving the needle in the right direction just a little bit every single day. And I think, like you said, we expect overnight results and we think it has to be all or nothing. And the second we don't reach that, we just give up and say, "Yep, can't do this. It's too hard."
Yep. It's
So,
all about consistency. And, the one thing we are consistently good at is, um, setting our expectations, way too high and then quitting when,
mm,
we're, inevitably not able to meet them.
I could not agree more. I wish I could say I'm not in that camp, but I am right there with you. Absolutely,
I do
all
it
or
too.
no.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
we
so
do
rather
it.
than all or nothing this week, let's just shoot for most improved in a few areas.
All right, guys, thanks for joining us for another week here on the Wisdom of Walt, and we will see you real soon.